Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And you know, if you join us on a regular basis, I'm your host, Ronald Bethea, and today's date is July the 20th, 2026. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Ronald Bethea, and you know if you join us on a regular basis, the slogan for this show, if there's power in numbers, then the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC captures that power for your financial benefit. The Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC serves as an economic blueprint for renewable energy companies, both large and small, along with cheer for African and African American. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And I'm your host, Ronald Bethea. And you know, if you join us on a regular basis, the slogan for this show, if there's power in numbers, then the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC captures that benefit will capture that power for your financial benefit. The Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC serves as an economic blueprint for renewable energy companies, both large and small, along with increasing market share for African and African American owned renewable energy companies to address the high energy costs at our historically Black colleges and universities, to utilize Black owned farmlands and HBCU campuses to develop capacity and initiatives for renewable energy projects to bring down the underemployment of young African American men and women locally, nationally, and throughout the diaspora. Also, to educate the African and African American community about the economic impacts of climate change and the need for environmental education through Black Talk radio programs such as Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, I bring this show to you as consistently as I possibly can. And I want to make all of you aware that here at the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC, I wear a number of hats. And one of those hats is I'm currently serving as the director of the board of directors for the National Association of Blacks in Solar, which is a 501c3 organization, which was established by me and several others. And we just lost one of our original board members who helped found one of the original founders of the National Association of Blacks in Solar, Mr. Charles R. Banks Jr., which is he's going to be very much missed by yours truly and the rest of our board members. We are uh, acknowledging Chuck's passing and his contributions to the National Association of Blacks in Solar because he's been a stalwart. He started with me in 2015 as I took my very first step into the renewable energy industry, transitioning from the transportation industry where we had served in a number of years with the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative, working on transportation industry issues around public transportation here in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., where we were successful in getting wheelchair accessible taxi cabs put on the street for then fleet owners of taxi cab companies. Um, After transitioning to the renewable energy industry in 2015, I went to and was able to meet with the head of the Department of Engineering at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which we know as many of you as Maryland State University, America. We went down because Chuck had a college classmate whose mother was Dr. Thompson, was the provost of UMES, and the University of Maryland Eastern Shore was the first HBCU in 2011 to build a physical solar farm on their campuses. It was a very small um, pilot. It was only 17 acres, but it was the very first pilot program initiated by historically Black colleges and universities here in the United States of America. And Chuck and I went down, we met with the head of the Department of Engineering at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And he took us into their laboratories and he uplinked to the satellite and shared with us images of over 100,000 acres of solar farms, which have been built on the Eastern Shore because at the same time, the UMES had just recently built this solar farm. NASA had curtailed their commercial launches for space projects in Florida, and they relocated those launch facilities to Ikiki Island on the eastern shore of Maryland, which many people are not aware of. And once those farmers on the eastern shore got wind of this project coming, looking after the pilot that had been established at the University of Maryland, over 100,000 acres of lease farmland was developed for solar and wind projects here in the state of Maryland. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the beginning of something very, very, very impactful as it relates to the state of Maryland, because at that time there was a lot of confusion. People were thinking all of the farmland would be used up by building these large scale solar power plants at that time. Since that time, we know that the farm industry and the solar industry have learned how to do more conservation, and they merged the farming and development of solar farms into a much eco-friendly collaboration as the uh, plans to roll out more large scale 1.5 megawatt solar farms have been developed here in the state of Maryland. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, Chuck was also involved in a major project in South Carolina where I had worked with him on for several years. We had, in fact, been in communications with the Albemarle Corporation, which is based here in the U.S. in Charlotte, North Carolina, but they're originally based out of Australia. He had been leading the communications uh, for NABs as it relates to that. And we had been working on trying to get Albemarle to become an off-taker for a large-scale solar power plant that he was building, and a project that I had been working with one of our other board members, Mr. Richard Corley, on a large-scale solar power plant to be built in Chester, South Carolina. And these things take time, effort, and a lot of stick to itness in order to make these things come. And Brother Banks had that patience and he had that drive, and he's going to be surely missed here on this platform, Solar Now. In the future, he's been a guest numerous times here on this platform. And once again, we want to go give our condolences to the Banks family and Chuck's immediate daughter and ex-wife who reside here in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are sad to open up our show this week, but we felt that this is something that we had to get done. So with that being said, our other subject matter or topic of discussion today is going to be about looking at what is taking place around the PJM as it relates to capacity building at the PJM and how it has impacted uh, another project, which I will talk about around community solar. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at a scenario where a recent news article appeared on the 14th of this month, which was last Tuesday, which dropped. It was a press release put out by an organization by the name of Evergreen Action, which I am a subscriber to, and I received an email concerning their position on the PJM interconnection release a capacity auction results for 80, 28, 29 delivery year. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is very, very important because I've been on the vanguard around this whole issue with the PJM. So for our listening audience, let's be very, very clear and make it absolutely clear as to what we're talking about as it relates to the PJM. The PJM is the interconnection organization responsible for operating the electrical grid, supplying power to 67 million ratepayers in 13 states in the District of Columbia. The $329.17 cap arrived from the 2023 lawsuit, which was brought on by Governor Shapiro, and it has already been maxed out in all 13 states in the District of Columbia. And on June 1st, we got hit with this $16 billion rate hike. Now, the cap was $329.17. This article went on to say that today the interconnection released by the PJM auction results for the 28-29 delivery year, a streak of record high prices exposing the grid operators' ongoing failures to deliver cheap, clean energy and maintain a reliable grid for customers. The clearing price once again hit the price cap. Now, the price cap was $329.17. It capped at $325 per megawatt day. PJM failed to secure capacities required to ensure reliability and delivery. Now, in response to that, the director of the Evergreen Action Strategic Incentives Program, Mrs. Julia Cortree, released the following statement. Today, PJM delivered more bad news for people already struggling with higher energy bills. Prices will continue at the maximum level allowed under the law. This was entirely avoidable. PJM continues to slow walk cheap, clean energy that could lower bills for working families while protecting a system of delivery record profits for member utilities rather than fixing the problem. After taking nearly 4 years to reopen an interconnection queue, and processing the backlogs of cheap and clean energy projects, the PJM has still failed to secure enough power to secure reliability on the hottest and coolest days of the year. During the stretch of record heat setting heat across the country, customers already left paying record prices for less reliable grid. PJM continues to allow the same utility fossil fuel companies to cash in while families get stuck with the bill. We are watching the PJM's upcoming FERC filings on its responsibility back up and connect with management proposals closely. We need to actually protect consumers from costs from data centers growth, not just paper to cover them. Now, this is important, ladies and gentlemen, and we, in fact, have discussed this at numerous times on this platform, talking about the PJM, talking about the PJM historic price cap raised occurred in for the 2025-2026 delivery year. Prices skyrocketed from $28.92 to $269.92 per megawatt day, a 900% rate hike for the 25-26 delivery year. The capacity costs for consumers reached $14.17 billion, up from $2.2 billion from the previous year. Did you hear what I just indicated, ladies and gentlemen? That the capacity pass-throughs for us as ratepayers jumped from 2.2 billion to 14.7 billion, and then the PJM came right back the following year. And on May 11th of this year, yours truly joined elected officials from Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, state senators. A press conference was held. CBS News carried that press conference where I had the opportunity to speak about this at that press conference. And the soaring demand for this was all expressed by all concerns that data centers were the biggest culprit in this skyrocketing rate hike, and they don't want to pay anything as it relates to the cost of these pass-throughs. The soaring demand from data centers, the PJM 13 states and the District of Columbia currently has 500 to 600 data centers online, with the state of Virginia leading the way with over 300 data centers already online, with more scheduled to be built in the state of Virginia. There has been a number of victories for the public here in the state of Maryland. In Gaithersburg, Maryland, a community advocacy group came together, working with the Montgomery County Council and their county executive. They were able to defeat a 2,000-acre campus to move data centers into Maryland on a large scale basis. At the same time, we were talking about a number of other states that have initiated moratoriums legislatively. Now, this has been the what we're talking about. And I'm going to talk about what you see behind me in a minute, which is a campaign that I have launched here through the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative to, in fact, a solution, one of the solutions for this rising costs to protect ratepayers, which came through community solar, which was a initiative that came out of the greenhouse gas initiative, which was to benefit 900,000 low and moderate income residents across the country. But what had to take place was states themselves had to get into the process. And in that process, they, in fact, had to do something which legislatively would deregulate the marketplace. Now, Think Energy, which I'm an independent energy advisor, is operating in the PJM territory. You will find a number of the same states through the PJM regulatory body that are under the same territory that Think Energy is operating in, which includes the states of Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, DC, Connecticut, Delaware, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Maine, Maryland. I've mentioned Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Virginia, and Think operates in the deep South in one state, which has deregulated its market. That is the state of Texas. So this program is available in all of the following states, and these programs are targeted to low and moderate income communities, and 40% of the benefit is based on legislative issues. Policy must go to low and moderate income communities. But that's where the bottleneck begins, ladies and gentlemen, through the PJM. By the PJM holding back and pushing wind, solar, and battery storage, large scale projects to the back of what they would call the skew, and pushing the fossil fuel projects to the front, it has created a lack of green energy credits available on the grid. In all 15 states that Think Energy is operating in, which 13 of those territories are under the PJM regulatory body, it has created what we would call a bottleneck because there's not enough energy, green energy credits coming online. So the subscription solar companies, which have been licensed by those states to sign up the residents for these community solar programs, have hit what we call a bottleneck. They have to put people on waiting lists. Now, let's look at what this truly means to you as a resident who needs relief. As we sign people up for this program, I have made it my business to make sure that the residents and the people that I communicate to about this community solar program understand the political ramifications of PJM's actions. What this has done is created and delayed the financial benefit for those who have already subscribed to the program, and it prevents the states from being able to reach their renewable energy goals. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, solar power is still thriving as we speak. And you'll be able to log on to our website at positivechangepc.com, click on our news and events tab, and go to our data blog, and you will find that we have built one of the most extensive databases in the country, and I say with the world, for people of African and African American descent and other folks of color, but anyone to go and get information about renewable energy and specifically how we have targeted this information to educate the African and African American and other communities of color. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, community solar is free, FREE, for anyone who pays an electricity bill and the bill is in their name. You can lower your electric bill rates up to 20 years by locking in the rate. Now, the PJM $16 billion June 1, 2026 rate hike is why you should consider locking in your rate, because we know at the end of 2029 that PJM will be right back at the table wanting to take the wholesale capacity cost rates for consumers even higher. Now, there's also a program which is not available in only 5 states. It's called AutoSave, which is only available in Delaware, Illinois, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and the District of Columbia. It's not available in Maryland and Virginia. But AutoSave was put in place, ladies and gentlemen, because there has been some very unscrupulous practices going on in the renewable energy field as relates to fraud. And we here at the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC have drilled down on these issues. We've had the privilege of having in the past a gentleman by the name of Mark. He is with the company called Mission Data. Mission Data has done an outstanding job in documenting this, I would call, energy crisis created by technology, because the utility companies have deactivated the data sharing options on millions of homeowners who have installed solar systems on their roofs. When you install a PV system on your roof, that company or installer will provide an app which for your phone, which will give you the ability to monitor how much energy your system produces each day, and that energy that is not being used, that because we have what we call smart meters, the meters turn backwards, and they're able, when they're turning backwards, they're basically recording the amount of energy that your system generated that was not used by your household that day. And it takes 1,000 kilowatts of electricity to make 1 kilowatt hour. Well, for DC residents, this is very important, because those RECs or energy credits have the highest value on planet Earth in the District of Columbia. They're trading for over $400 for a kilowatt hour on the commodities market each day. And that's what the utility companies have done. They have deactivated, turned off people's systems, apps, and they are basically stealing those credits, selling them every day on the REX market. And this is where the money is. It's more money in that than there is in the installation business, believe me. But you can't get these credits without systems being built. These things have to be built. And when they're built, they're creating jobs, okay? Hard jobs for electricians, for framers, uh, the whole ecosystem around renewable energy is based on people being able to take advantage of those credits. That is the economic engine that drives the engine. Let's be clear about that. Now, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, autosave was put in place so that those companies that are operating inside of these deregulated markets could not switch you and give you a higher rate after they had sold you a cheaper rate in their presentation. And the term is called bait and switch, but we know that this has been problematic here in Washington, in our nation's capital, for quite some time. There has been many complaints filed by DC residents who have installed PV systems already on their roofs. And in fact, the DC Public Service Commission has taken action concerning this, along with the Office of the People's Counsel, which was headed by Mrs. Fry. I don't know, she has been stepping down. Very dynamic African American sister who has provided leadership as the lead counsel for the Office of the People's Counsel here in our nation's capital. And her and her husband have been very, very close friends of mine for years. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the other product here that we're talking about is something called lower your electric bill with solar credits. And to lower your electric bill with solar credits, credits for the discount up to 20% to reduce your electricity bill. This is another service, a product which Think Energy provides. If you log on to our website at Positive Change PC, you can listen to two presentations, one by Reverend Williams, who talks about the opportunities for faith-based organizations, as well as other nonprofits and just regular businesses who that would be interested in this opportunity. Also, there's another video there with Mr. Milton uh, Burke, who is one of the senior leaders in Think Energy. Milton explains the business opportunity that's available if you would decide to become an energy advisor. And you can do so by logging on to getthinkenergy.com/solar now and the future. That will be at my login page. Once again, that's getthinkenergy.com, get.thinkenergy.com/solar now in the future. And you can go directly to our website once again at positivechangepc.com, and you will scroll down to our affiliate marketing area, and you'll be able to see the opportunities, business opportunities for Maryland, DC, and Virginia. You'll be also able to see the various programs that you can sign up for. All are free, FREE. Also, let those who may be residents of the state of Texas and Illinois, Think Energy has entered into a collaboration with Energy Well. That's ENERGYWELL.com. Energy Well has started a battery replacement program, and it is no money down, power purchase agreement, minimum very under $100 refundable deposit, but these are $18,000 to $30,000 battery storage systems. This is not for people who have solar already on their roof. This is for people who don't have solar on their roofs and they're interested in taking that advantage of the battery program in those states. This program is very similar to the Generac system. When the power goes out, you've seen those commercials. Well, this will do the same thing. The reasoning behind this, these pilots were launched to, in fact, put enough systems online so virtual power plants could be built. Virtual power plants is software agriculture, software development, which has already been developed, where they can aggregate independent systems and tap into those systems when those systems have stored, those battery packs have stored energy during non-peak hours, and during peak hours they can tap into those sources, and the higher rates that peak hours and demand drives is the difference in the cost, and their financial benefits going back to those homeowners that have those battery systems installed in their homes. They're called virtual power plants. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. We have, as I've said, we have launched here. You are looking at the advertising uh, for our campaign, which says Solar Now in the Future with its economic impact on Black America, the online digital podcast radio, YouTube TV network. We are your online source for solar and renewable energy project funding, which you are listening to me on the Positive Change YouTube online digital network as as we say as we speak. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are very aware that there are a number of things going on. Now, I want to let people know, if you are in the DMV market area, you can go by to several locations, which we have been working tirelessly trying to get several of our churches to, in fact, put the signage up at the churches so people will be able to scan the barcode to take advantage of these programs. Let me be clear, ladies and gentlemen. This campaign is not going to last. These campaigns are not going to last that long because of the caps. In the state of Virginia, in April, the state legislature just passed regulation increasing the megawattage for the community solar program from 325 megawatts to a little over 500, and I think 35 megawatts. But it increases the capacity for enrolling another 125,000 residents in the state of Virginia. At this present time, I don't know how many solar subscription companies are enrolling people in the state of Virginia. Here in the District of Columbia, our nation's capital, there are a little over 11,000 DC residents that have already enrolled in the solar program. The difference in the DC program is that because they don't have the space, they're utilizing smaller, what we call mini, what we call solar megawatt under 1.5 megawatts. There are what they would call a smaller systems to supply these energy credits for DC residents that have enrolled in the community solar program within DC, because the law is written where the energy for solar has to come from the physical confines of the District of Columbia. So the Department of Energy and Environment, they have been building and building and building. I had recently an interview with Mr. Ted Trabue, who is a member of the DC Public Service Commission now. He previous served for almost 10 years as the director of the DC Sustainability Utility, DCSEU, and the Solar for All pilot was started by him, Mark Davis of WDC Solar, and Darrell Green, NFL Burgundy and Gold Hall of Famer, started the original community solar pilot, which the Biden-Harris administration picked up on and put $7 billion in that program. And this is where the community solar, as a part of the Solar for All project, originally came through the Inflation Reduction Act. This is the historical perspective, the correct perspective, because in history, it'll look like Black folks, we had nothing to do with the renewable energy industry in this country. That is why I established the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative online database to be able to document through film, videos, interviews, our contributions to the renewable energy industry in this country, because this is nothing new, ladies and gentlemen. Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House, Ronald Reagan took them down. Not until Katrina hit New Orleans and Van Jones wrote and authored the Green for All legislation under the Bush administration, Jr. 2008, Obama came to power, and everything else is history. That's how these programs are launched, and they've moved forward from 2008 to now. Obama put $10 billion in the Sunshine Identity Initiative. Anyone wants to find out more about that, once again, can log on to Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC, click on under our media gallery, and you'll be able to watch the Sunshine Identity Initiative. I think it's one of the very first videos that we placed, and it's been there since Obama left office, and that's 2016. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we've concluded another edition of Solar Now in the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Any business, church, nonprofit, you can call me at 202-246-4924. You can email me at info@PositiveChangePC. You can go to our website at Positive Change PC. And if you're interested in just enrolling in the program to take advantage of the benefits, you can go to get.thinkenergy.com/solar now in the future, and you can enroll directly in the program. And with that being said, once again, we're sending out our condolences to the Banks family as we mourned the loss of a very, very dear friend and colleague, Mr. Charles Robert Banks Jr., who was a founding member of the National Association of Blacks in Solar, and a very, very dear friend to yours truly here. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we don't want you to meet us back here. We want you to beat us back here as we close another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Until next week, we say go in peace.